I loved how he went from slashing her with his sword to hugging her like his life depended on it. When Sett was introduced, he made my blood boil quite a lot of times. His actions showed that he lacked emotional maturity and understanding of boundaries. He also had a very dark side that was quite concerning. And not to mention that he tried to hurt Nina on multiple occasions. In short, he was definitely a red flag. But after his redemption arc, God, it made me want to choose him for her over and over again. I'm kinda sad the anime ended, and if you want to continue with the manga, start by chapter 25. It's in volume 7. The funny thing is that even by then, Sett hasn't turned into a green flag yet. He acted worse than how he did in the beginning. The reason for his behavior could be justified, but only because it's fictional. If you followed the anime, you'd know that Nina was accused of poisoning Sett and was later sent to the prison while he stayed unconscious. Now, as the time passed and he gained consciousness, he starts to look for her, not to clear out misunderstandings, but unfortunately to end it all. He was ready to kill everyone and anyone who gets into his way. I know that he's a tough character. The author herself called him overwhelming. It's like he's too lost in his own mind, and the worst thing is that he has severe trust issues. The only person he let in was Nina, and she too betrayed him. I feel like if it was only the case of poisoning, he would have been less mad at her, but it clearly wasn't. Because when he was on his way to meet her, in his not so steady mental and physical health, he collapsed and was saved by none other than Azure, who could have killed him right there and then, but decided against it, because that wasn't the person that he wanted to be. However, when he was leaving, he told Sett that he couldn't have Nina. Sett already suspected the messengers from Fortuna, but now hearing him say that made it clear to him that Nina was in fact doing everything for her people and for her kingdom, and maybe for Azure too. It was kind of sad to see him laugh so humorlessly and to think about the amount of pain he'd had to go through after realizing that Nina had actually betrayed him. But that all went into the bin the next time he arrived, because he went straight for Nina with his sword, saying, "This is the answer I reached after trying to love." Honestly, it was a good thing that Soul and Azure were there to protect Nina, or I think she would have gotten slashed one more time. And the thing I like about Nina is that she took responsibilities for her actions and tried to clear out the misunderstandings, even if it meant that she had to deny Azure's request to return to Fortuna with him. And I also liked how she went from "kill me if that's what you want" to "I'm not going to die, we're going to have a happy life." This was the last time Sett had messed up, like really messed up, because he even forced himself on her again, along with pushing her to the ground and shooting at her. It was later revealed that he wasn't actually going to shoot her, but even if he was, Nina the bird had come to rescue her and could have been the one who died. And since he wasn't aiming at Nina the girl, Nina the bird survived too, though she fainted because of the loud sound. When I read that, I felt so bad for the bird and was so thankful that she was alright later. Now, if it wasn't for the sweet moment of them that followed later, I am pretty sure a lot of people would have hated him and would have been Team Azure for sure. Okay, so despite his angry state, Nina hugged him and ran after taking his gun away. One more noticeable thing was that Sett didn't want it to hurt her, as he kept on saying that someone should stop him, but he couldn't do that himself. Maybe because he still doesn't know how to deal with his emotions just yet. But when the bridge that Nina had led them to breaks under her feet, he pushes her aside and fell instead of her. Well, he didn't actually fall, as Nina had held his sleeve. She told him how important and special he was to her, and in the end, both of them fall down. And if it wasn't for Nina's ability to control wind, they would have died already. Anyways, that was the last time he messed up, and after that, his redemption arc started. Actually, I don't think you can call it a redemption arc. It's more like his depression phase, where he turns into a younger self and closes the door, making himself alone again. It went on for half a volume, I think, until he showed up to protect Nina from the King of Golgotha along with Soul and Azure. I love how these three get together to protect Nina, and this won't be the last time they would do it. Nina was happy to see Sett back to normal. However, he was still lost in his head and was not even speaking. He just held the sword to protect her. Fast forward to them leaving for Fortuna. He only spoke once at that time, telling her that he loves her, and in return she told him that she wanted to spend spend more time with him, asking him to join them on the ship. But when they reached Portna, he went back to being his tiny mute self again. I think he finally let go of those thoughts the night when Nina visited him before her banishment, telling him that her powers can hurt people so she wouldn't want to be near others, similar to what he had been thinking. And right after waking up, he went to search for her, but this time when he found her, he hugged her. I don't know, but for me, these scenes were the most heartbreaking part of the whole series because when he saw her, she was damaged pretty badly, emotionally and physically, the cause of her distress being the real Alicia and Azure too in a way. At that time, the way Sett spoke to her and cleared her doubts had me melting. He told her that he went through the same thing, saying that there was a time when he wanted to protect her from his curse, from his greed, and from himself. That's why he ran back to the time when he was powerless. But sadly, that didn't guarantee that she would not get hurt. However, it did mean that he would not be able to help her. He said that the powerless him can't hurt her, but it cannot comfort her either. So he'd rather be by her side, even if he ends up hurting her. However, she was still scared of her powers, and he goes, "Before the powers of the stars can activate, I'll make all your wishes come true." He convinced her and asked her for her wish, and she told him how she wants to live normally among others like before, and how she wants to control her powers, while he gently brushes her hair away from her face. Still, she wasn't completely convinced, so later he asked her to use her power over him, only to joke around about it to make her understand his point. This was the start of their little adventure together in the city of water, Starbia. There, the way he protected her and took care of her was something that I really enjoyed reading. I mean, just look at how cool he looks trying to protect her. Soon he ends up being the most supportive person for her. Maybe that's why she learned to control at least a little bit of her powers. Oh, it's not related to Nina or Sett, but she met Saji again, the boy who sold her in the beginning. And she didn't just met him, she also saved him from the fire along with Sett. Alright, so at this point his character development is pretty visible. He even learned how to be considerate about her, but still I think he doesn't really understand the boundaries. Though that doesn't really matter because I think Nina is getting used to it herself. The story was going well. We were getting our fair share of Nina and Sett until she got reunited with Soul, and the three of them traveled to another place where the star people had stayed to learn more about them. They reached there and tried to get more information about those people. They were doing their investigation just fine, but suddenly Nina presses some stone on the wall, causing a door to open, and when she enters the cave, the door closes behind her. The place where she reached had toxic air that causes hallucinations, and guess who she hallucinated about? Azure. She saw him saying that he regretted even falling in love with her, calling her power a curse. At some point, she recognized that it wasn't real, but by the time the fog lifted from her mind, she fainted. And guess who finds her first? Azure. He was there too, and when he saw Nina in that state, he had to give her the medicine. But the thing was that he did all that and her unconscious mind called out Sett's name. I really don't like how the author keeps on messing with our feelings because for now above 60 chapters have been released and she still haven't clarified who Nina is going to end up with. Reading the previous chapters, I really thought that Nina was going to end up with Sett. But after Azure got here and Sett confronts him about the throne being more important than Nina, he thinks about the real reason for him not reaching out to Nina before. It was because the real Alicia wanted Nina dead. And back then he was going to come after Nina but had to stop because he didn't want it to put her life in danger. Even now when Nina floats after they reach the place where they were searching for, he backed away while Sett holds her like it was his full right. Still, the fact that he wasn't there to save her first back then distracted him. Maybe because she had asked him if he was the one who saved her, or maybe because she had made up her mind to stop Azure from going to war. As Alicia somehow spawned there and Azure had told them that he would rule over the world after taking down Galgada. And just as he said that, Nina saw the destruction, hence her decision to stop Azure from going to war. She was certain that it wasn't true Azure and was determined to find the real him. On the other hand, Sett was starting to feel all sorts of things because now Nina was not in fragile state, but was back on being her old determined self. He thought about what he was to this new her. Honestly, he was giving his best in hopes that one day she would love him. But seeing her being so worried about the person who had abandoned her made him kinda double check his emotions and thoughts. He left for a while to be alone and went through his feelings. He didn't want to force love on her because he knew how ugly it would be. But he also wanted to stay by her side until his feelings were rewarded. I think for Azure it was easy to let Nina go for her sake and love her unconditionally. But as for Sett, he was still struggling with his emotions. As the rain starts, Nina arrives there and he sulks like a little child, calling himself hideous and whatnot. Now, I feel like the right thing would have been for Nina to confess her feelings to him, but as I said, the author is not going to make her choose that easily. So she said she doesn't know much, but her heart is pounding. And that was enough to convince Sett to continue his one-sided love. Actually, he's the one who thinks it's one-sided. I don't really think it's one-sided, at least not for now. Because later when Sett was called to go back to Calcutta, now that Fortuna has also become their enemy, Nina had thought about who she was going to be with, or rather how Sett would be by her side for the next 5 to 10 years. Not just that, she wanted him to be beside her. And of course, before he left for Calcutta, she confessed her feelings for him. And he promises to fulfill her wishes and meet her again in a month or two. She was acting like it was fine that he was leaving, but at the same time, she was hoping that he would stay. Unfortunately, he didn't stay with her and went to Calcutta, and we get their goodbye scenes. The whole thing was so cute, like how he gave her a good luck hair clip saying that it has his prayers and asked her not to lose it, and how she didn't have anything to give him, so she ends up kissing him on the cheek. Honestly, this volume had some great light moments, like apart from the main story, we also get to see Sett and Nina working on the field. Also, saying I'll see you tomorrow is such a heartwarming way to say goodbye. Anyways, Sett left and Nina started her mission of figuring out what was wrong with Azure, along with gaining more knowledge about those star people. I guess that was all for their scenes. Do read the manga to understand and enjoy the story better. It kind of have a unique plot. That was all for today. Thank you for listening to me. Take care of yourself and goodbye.
I don't really wanna hurt you, but I can't control the pain. If you're sticking by my side, maybe we could be okay. Okay, maybe you could be the change.